on page 10 in relation to how many people in regional New South Wales do not have access to reliable internet services, and some need assistance with banking, such as the elderly or those with a disability will be further disadvantaged by the loss of their local branch. And I know I have difficulty in the internet banking too, so I really prefer to go to the banks. And the rest is pretty self-explanatory. Would anyone else like to say anything? Councillor Hayes?
Where do they expect you to go now? Lismore, I assume, do they? To do your baggy? That's
I presume, yeah.
Is there ANZ in Kyogle? There's not, is there? No. Yep.
Thank you. Anyone else like to say anything? Okay, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you.
Page 11, 10.2, notice of management by Councillor Hayes. Councillor Hayes.
Yeah, just like to move that notice of motion as written. Is that all that time to read it?
Second, please, Councillor Simpson. Councillor Hayes.
Yeah, look, I think this this artificial reef that's on offer for the North Coast is something that council should be advocating for, to try and get one at Evans Head. If you read there's the fisheries enhancement artificial reefs. It's a program expressions of interest for the locations that we can comment on. There's 2 locations for the reef, and one's between where we at here? The north between Ballina and Evans Head, and the other one's south between Evans Head and Yamba Point. So this notice of motion is just to get it out there, and that we should be put in a submission to get it within our coastal area. But you know, I really think that off between and the north end is a lot better option than the south side, just for access to the beach and you know, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. It only benefits if it goes on the south side, it only benefits the reef fishermen that go out in the ocean. Where if it's on the north side, it actually attracts fish to the beach areas, and it's going to enhance the fishing on Air Force Beach, which we have a few issues with, which are in the next notice of motion. So I think if we put in a submission, we should push for it to be on the northern end, but to get it would be great. And I know the business chamber also, they're out there and putting it out there for people to put in submissions. So you can go online, it's tick a box thing. You get you got to put in 2 choices of areas. So yeah, so there's 2 choices for our area. So, thank you.
Any other speakers? Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, I'd just like to lend my support to the motion. I think anything that we can do which enhances the recreational fishing opportunities, particularly for Evans Head, which is one of the reasons that people visit the area, might also help me catch a fish, which would be nice. And you know, I think there's an opportunity here for us to advocate for it rather than letting it go somewhere else. So I recommend we support the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Lyons.
I support the motion as well. I did some research on artificial reefs, and if they're put in correctly, they can help restore coral reefs that have been destroyed by human impact and storms. They also can be very helpful with erosion. So putting it in the correct sort of place, these structures can make shores much more stable against erosion, which would be really beneficial for our beaches, particularly with the erosion that's being affected. King tides, and the biggest attraction is that they attract tourists from all different people, snorkelers, scuba divers, you've got your fishers, all that sort of thing. There are a couple of cons which I'm sure will be taken into consideration, but one of the concerns is overfishing. So instead of increasing that, so they do sort of recommend that reefs should be protected and fishing allowed at a certain distance so that there isn't any overfishing. But as a whole, it could be really positive to sort of protect our coastline. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Councillor Hayes, right to reply?
Yeah, just on the location of this reef, if it ever comes to us, it's pretty important that for the northern end, because of if you go, if you're going out to sea fishing and it's a windy day or the wind comes up, you go south. It's going to be a lot easier to get out on the northern end, and it's going to assist the beach fishermen too, as long as it's positioned in the right spot. So it'll benefit everyone on the northern end. On the southern end, it only benefits the guys that can get out to sea and get to the thing on in different types of weather as well. So I think there's a lot more going for the northern end than the southern end. But if they were going to put in the southern end, we probably shouldn't knock it back.
Put that close to
Thank you.
debate. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. Page 12, 10.3, another notice of motion by Councillor Hayes on their first beach access. Councillor Hayes.
Okay, I'd just like to call as written, if I can get a seconder.
Second.
Councillor Simpson.
This issue has become pretty important to our elderly folk in Evans Head that beach fish regularly and have done it for a long time. As you can see from the letters, those letters only come in over a period of a few days. When I decided to put this notice of motion in, I did ask them, if they wanted me to do it, I needed to see some support for it, and I think you'll get a lot more support for something to put something in place for the elderly to be able to use the beach, and to be able to fish where they have done in the past. And all the letters say that there's not enough room on the bit of beach that we've left for the four-wheel drive access at the present time. So, I really think that if we can do something, it'd aid these people in their pastime, which for relaxation. A lot of them mentioned that they go up there a lot to fish as part of their mental health program. So, I think it's something that we should support if we can. I don't know what we can do, but no doubt a report will come back, and if we can do something, we can go from there.
Yep. Other speakers? Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, look, I agree with the idea of investigating what can be done to help those few, that group of local elderly fishermen. I certainly stand by our decision to close Boundary Creek and access to four-wheel drives on the Coffee Rock in particular. But if we are able to do something that's going to help that group of elderly people that do use that area for fishing and give them some access so that they can continue to do what they've done for a long period of time, then we should be doing that. So, thank you.
Councillor Lyons.
Agree with what both Daniel and Robert have said. Maybe this is the time where we look at permits, at least to make it so that the elderly people don't miss out. They're able to get down there at no cost. So then they are knowing that they're doing the right thing. I know that it's something that a lot of people are asking for permits. It's a good way to sort of check it all out, see how it's going to work. And then maybe down the track, look at bringing in a permit for visitors that come into the place to help restore. As good as it is, and getting the vehicles on the beach, we still have to look after our beaches and the wildlife, in particular the pied oyster catchers. So I think that should be at in the back of our minds all the time. But I said right from the start, as much as I want permits and access restricted, we can't leave out the elderly. And Robert's comment about mental health is really highly beneficial. We are one of the council regions that is suffering with really high levels of mental health issues right across the whole valley. So it's important that we look out for that. And a lot of people aren't, fishers still find the beach absolutely wonderful, and those who can't access it for whatever reason, I still think they should be able to get down there in their four-wheel drives, but they have to, I prefer to see a permit. But I'm happy for this to go ahead, and I look forward to reading the investigation report and seeing where it's up to. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Councillor
Through you, Mr Mayor,
Morrison?
just a question. So we received an email submission, and in part of it, was that in relation to this item that we received that? In part of it here, it says there was no consultation with the residents before the area was closed. Was that?
Mr General Manager.
Well, I think we've been consulting a fair bit on beach closures over quite a period of time, really, and obviously there's been a lot of communication coming from the Ballina end as well, and their sort of deliberations around whether to close South Ballina Beach. They obviously have made, made representations to the government to close South Ballina Beach, and for that to happen, we didn't really have a choice but to close the Boundary Creek access. Otherwise, people could get on there, but there was nowhere else to go. It'd be on and off, and they'd be able to get access that whole area. So it was a decision that we made to, I suppose, in conjunction with those other agencies. We will have to go back and consult with them on what options may be available. I'm certainly aware that I think Ballina are revisiting these sorts of arrangements because they're getting some feedback. I think there's been consultation on the whole beach access issue, whether there was specific consultation on closing Boundary Creek itself and that South Ballina Beach area. Maybe not as much as people may have liked, but there's certainly been a lot of conversations about this issue over the last, well, for us, it's been a couple of years. And unfortunately, it's heading in the direction of, further restrictions and tightening because people keep doing the wrong thing. I think at Easter, we put signage up, and it was pretty blunt, respect the beach or it'll get closed. So hopefully people are taking it seriously. I think the reports from our rangers, things are improving, but that doesn't stop the occasional instance of bad behaviour. So, just hope we'll look at the options and we'll bring a report back to you that'll consider, whether there's any implications as far as the other agencies go, Ballina Shire Council goes, and what our powers are as to access arrangements through that access. So we'll bring a report back to the June meeting, and we'll certainly endeavour to find a solution if we can.
Thank you.
Councillors, you may recall that it might be a couple of years ago, 18 months ago, there was intense community consultation, and one of the options was permit, close it, leave it open, restrict it. So there was a lot of consultation then, and that would be on file. Because I remember we had, I think, 2 reports come to council about it. So it has occurred, but that can feed into that report that was previously done. So, any other speakers? Councillor Hayes, you want to write a reply?
Yeah. The letters that are attachment there today were all from the group of people that they come from. They were all fully supportive of what we've done with the beach up to date and what's happening down there. They're supportive that we've closed off the Black Rocks, and they went on further to say that their group, as they call themselves, they're old fellas. They look after their four-wheel drives. They don't drive them in the salt water. They don't drive them over the rocks. That's not what they're on about. All they want to do is chug up the beach, get out and have a fish, and come back. So they're not the group that are going to cause us dramas, but we've got to decipher somehow, some way, of how to split that group from the rest of the trouble that we've had up there. Once again, the artificial reef, if that gets put on Air Force Beach in the future, it's going to enhance the fishing experience up there, and they're probably not going to have to go as far anyway to get a fish as they have to now. And for years they've said that they've gone up the beach, they've come off the beach, they've gone up the Boundary Creek and gone back onto the beach when they've got to go up the beach further. They do not drive over the Black Rocks. So, that's just in their favour. And, so I'll close with that, but I think we really need to do something, whether it's a permit system or, I don't know, but we'll wait until the report comes back and see if we can help them out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Close the debate. All those in favour? Unanimous. Page 13, item 11.1, mayoral's attendances. I'll move that. Could I get a seconder,
Second.
please? Councillor Morrissey. Any questions?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Morrissey.
16th of April, Community Safety Precinct Committee meeting. Just wondering how the statistics that come out of that meeting
I'm sorry?
Just wondering how the statistics that are...
Look, for Richmond Valley, very good. Very good. A lot of the crime were down. Yeah, it was very pleasing to see those results. Yeah.
And the 20th, Kevin Hogan MP, funding inspection recreation hall, Evanshead. I might have missed that.
Previously, the federal government made an allocation to the hall, and on the day Councillor Hayes and Simpson were there, and they met with some of those hall committee and had a look at those curtains, I think there was, and a few other minor things, but what they really wanted and needed to be done. And on the day there was also a craft group that meets there. They've been meeting for about 30 years now, so that was good to catch up with them and have a look at their craft and what they create. Very talented people, so yeah, it was just for member for Page to go and have a look at where the money's being spent, and likewise with their scout hall.
Thank you. And one last one. The 1st of May, Stockman's Challenge Casino.
Yes.
Just wondering with the attendance, how that was compared to other.
Previously, was it last year or the year before? Last year? They got one in last year before COVID, did they? Or was it the year before? Anyway, the previous one had, I think, not quite 100 participants. They had, this was planned for earlier in the year, but it got washed out, and they had 300 applications, entries. So they were a bit worried where they were going to put them on. They can't wait for the upgrade to go over there because they can only see it getting bigger and better. But at this one, when it was held, it had, because there was it clashed with another one up around Toowoomba, which is a big one, and also a sale day that they sell the horses there. And I think they had 130. So yes, it was bigger than the last one, but not as big as it could have been. So hopefully next year they can go back to their date and original date, and it'll be bigger and better than ever. And as that improves over there, they're expecting to be one of the biggest horse events around the area. So.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Any other questions? I'll put that motion then. All those in favour? Carried. Delegates' reports, page 14, 12.1. I'll move that as being a Councillor Morrissey seconder. Any questions? Councillor Simpson.
Yes, Mr Mayor. Rouse is currently consulting on the future water strategy with submissions closing on the 28th of this month.
Yes.
Just wondering whether you've had any indication as to how many submissions are being put forward and what they contain at this point?
No, I don't inquire into that. Let the system run its course. I think that's the right process to do. I do know, but from that night we were talking, we went to the chamber meeting in Evanshead. There was 2 gentlemen there that are pro-dam, and they said that they are getting a petition signed, but petitions aren't anywhere like a submission. So what the submissions are and how many there are or who they're for. I know on my email site I'm getting a lot who support the current exhibition strategy and always put in they don't want to see the dam back, but I think that's a bit of a way they go about that thing. And a lot of them are just generic letters over and over and over, but they seem to send them to not only the Rouse General Manager but also to the councillors. The other pro-dam people, I'll call them because that's what they refer to themselves as, I haven't had really any contact with them. I have a letter tomorrow going in the Independent about inaccuracies that have been coming out of this debate over this year, and so that letter will be written on behalf of me as Mayor, because it is a council's resolution on 2 occasions that we support all studies being investigated, which is including the dam. So I just thought I'd write that to let people know that a lot of the mistruths that are going on around there, and why, if you're doing a study for everything else, you should do a study so council can get the right information. So, and evidence-based information. The dam was taken out before the studies were completed, and that's not evidence-based. That's not sound local government. So, for councils to make that decision, they need to have that. So, no, I'm sorry, that was a long-winded answer. No, I don't know. Any other questions? Councillor Hayes.
Our council's putting a submission in. Is it that where we go, or we go elsewhere?
I think last meeting we had a resolution
Yeah,
to
we
put
did, yep.
put a submission in. Yep. I'll put that motion then. All those in favour? Good. Carried. Matters determined without debate. Has any councillors got any?
14.3, please.
14.3.
15.1,
15.1.
16.1,
Yes.
16.2.
16.2.
Got my wires crossed there.
We need to do 60.
Yeah, I got them. Yeah.
That's well, Rob was going to call it anyway.
So what was that?
Yeah, see, it needed to be
Oh, okay, yep.
just like
16.1, yep.
both was done.
I also have 14.1 and 14.2. We have 16.1, haven't we, the planning one? Any other councillors? Any other items? So, Mr General Manager, that leaves, I believe, 15.2 and 15.3. Is that correct? Can I get a motion for 15.2 and 15.3,
Yes.
please? Councillor Morrissey. Second. Councillor Lyons. (15.2) and 15.3. Put that motion. All those in favour? Carried. Presentation, yep. Mr General Manager, I believe we have a presentation in 14.1. I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, I'll just hand that over to Director Gator to take us through a short overview of our budget for the next financial year. Obviously, the aim is to put that out for community consultation over the next month. So I'll just hand over to you, Ryan.
Yeah, so the finance team has put together a short presentation on just key assumptions we've used in the budget, proposed charges and some major capital works. Okay, income from continuing operations, our general rates are set to increase by 5.5% along with our SRV. Domestic annual waste charge 4.55%, non-domestic waste charge of 5.14%, sewer annual charges of 4.88%, and water annual charges of 6.5%. User charges and fees generally increased by 3%. Interest and investment revenue rates are expected to stay low for our investments. So we've looked at those between 1.4 to 4% over the 10-year LTFP. And grants and contributions, the major grant is the financial assistance grant, and it's been indexed at 1.76%. Expenses, salaries increase of 2.17%. Electricity is actually decreased by 7%. We went out to tender for a few of our electricity charges. Materials and contracts by 1%. Insurance is the big increase by 16.19%. And other expenses, things like advertising, council expenses and donations at 1%. Our rates for next year, residential going up 5.5%, rural res around 6%, business 5.5% and farmland 5.5%, but overall our yield from our rates is increasing 5.5% in line with our SRV. Our proposed annual charges, domestic waste is at $620, which is a 4.5% increase. Non-domestic waste, $655, 5.14% increase. Our water availability charge is $180 at 6.51% increase. Our water usage, the first 200 kilolitres is at $2.74, which is a 6.61% increase. And in excess of 200 kilolitres is $4.17, which is a 6.38% increase. The Casino Food Co-op, or NCMC, it's at $1.02, which is CPI'd at 0.77%. And the sewer annual charge residential is at $1,075, which is a 4.88% increase. The summary of the budget, we've got 79.3 million in income from continuing operations, 67.7 million in expenses from continuing operations. The operating result is a $11.6 million surplus, and once we take out capital grants and contributions, it's a deficit of 2.216 million. We've got 46.1 million in capital works, and all these things are funded by 11.5 million in reserve funding, and we have just over $300,000 cash surplus. The major capital works in that 46 odd million. Casino pool upgrade of just over 6 million. Casino showground and racecourse upgrade of just over 5 million. Rapville Hall and Community Precinct of $1 million. Urban road renewals of 2.4 million. Sealed rural roads and bridge renewals of 2.96 million. Sealed regional roads of 3.4 million, unsealed rural roads and bridges of 1.4 million, real estate development of 3.19 million, plant purchases in waste of 1.5 million, Namoona landfill capping of cells 1 to 4 at 1.89 million, and cell 6 construction at Namoona of 3 million. Casino water treatment plant renewals and upgrades of 1.557 million, and plant purchases outside of waste of just over 3 million. That's it.
Thank you. I'll move the recommendation on page 19. Can I get a seconder, please?
Second.
Councillor Simpson. I'll start with a couple of questions. Capital Works program's 46 million, but on page 33 of the agenda, it's another item, but it's relevant. I noticed that our capital works program estimate for this year is around 27. That's a $20 million, roughly, increase on a works program, which is most probably one of our biggest works programs ever. What's the capabilities to deliver that extra? How do we go about that? Have we got the staff? Do we go to contractors? I'd just like to know that we're not going to carry a lot of these over, or we may have to carry some of them. So some may be done in the first half, over a 2-year period. So
I might get Director Gator to just get, or Director Zeller, one of the two, to have a crack, and I'll add anything at the end.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, that's an accurate observation that there's almost a $20 million swing there in our capital works program. We're currently having discussions at the moment about our resourcing in particularly our project management office, because it's quite obvious we need the people on the ground to deliver that program. So the intention there is to actually go out and recruit. Obviously, the good thing about that is that given that a lot of that's through grant funding, that can be used to majority fund those extra people. But most of that stuff will be delivered by contractors, but obviously there needs to be a project management element internally. So acknowledged, but yes, we are certainly having those discussions at the moment.
and council will be updated as we go along, every quarter review of how we're going with that.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I think it's a challenging time. It's great to have stimulus, grant funding, and a lot of these projects happening, but we are starting to see some challenges in availability of contractors, and I think that's indicative of one of the tenders that you are considering this evening, where we just got the one response. So everyone, yeah, it's great. Yeah, plenty of money out there, but we've only got so many people in our region to deliver these projects. So there's going to be some challenges, but we're doing what we can to get it delivered as quickly as we can, and we'll certainly be keeping you up to date as the financial year progresses, as we always do.
Thank you. Second question is on page 23. Our fleet replacement program is over $3 million. From what I recall, that seems to be more than usual.
Yeah, that's about $1 million heavy than what our normal fleet replacement program is, but that's basically due to some plant replacement from our current year's budget with supply issues, and in particular the purchase of, I think, is it 2 or 3 garbage trucks? So three garbage trucks that we need to procure. Obviously a fair purchase, and we won't be getting them until into the next financial year. So it's really a timing thing due to supply issues that we are facing, not just with, say, garbage trucks, but even motor vehicles. I'm sure many people in the community are facing that. It's some vehicles, it's a 6-month wait. So we are facing a bit of that supply side impact as well.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, just a question as well. Since you picked up on it, Mr. Mayor, I was actually going to ask a similar question, but Council's capital works budget in our quarterly budget review, there's about $7 million in proposed carryovers. Now, if they're carried forward, do they add to the $46 million program, making it a $53 million program next year?
No, it doesn't. They're already factored into the draft budget for 21-22.
Thank you.
Sorry, just so you're aware, the potential is, so our forward budget for the next 12 months at the moment doesn't include, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, the bushfire recovery funding, because we haven't actually signed off on some funding agreements. And the other one that may boost our capital program is the rail trail, where we've got to go through another process to get that additional $6.5 million to be able to build the rail trail. So I'll just flag with you that our capital program may fluctuate a bit with funding. Obviously, when grant funding comes in, we have to put it into our budgets, and we generally put it into the budget on the year of that year that it's received. Then we have to get our planning done, decide how we're going to spend that, and then we can push it forward where we can. So it's going, next 12 months is going to be challenging to monitor that capital program, which we will do that closely. But it is a big program. There's a lot going on, a lot to deliver. But I think it's, I suppose in some ways it's a good challenge to have because it is actually delivering things that our community are keen to see.
Nothing else? Anyone? Mr. General Manager, it might be worthwhile just to explain how this $46 million doesn't just sit in council's bank balance. It's how the procedure we've got to get through to get these payments. But they just don't give us the money straight up and it sits there and we spend it.
Yeah, we put it in our budget, but we don't actually get the cash until you hit certain milestones through each of the projects. So, but that's obviously the grant funding that we've been successful in receiving has certainly contributed to the reserves that we have in our accounts. But a lot of those reserves are restricted funds that are sitting there for delivery of those projects that we've been successful with. So, yeah, it does. There's a fair bit goes into it. Got a great finance team who keep on top of it all.
I just recall when we had the money from the sale yards, a lot of people thought that come in a block grant, but I think it was late last year or we only got the last payment. So it takes a while for that money to trickle through. It just doesn't sit in there and council gets interest on it over the years. So, any other councillors? Page 20, I'm closing now. I just the budget estimates going forward. I think they're very solid and positive projected figures there. 23, 22. We're running a surplus in all of those sections there, so I think that's a great outcome. And going on from that, 24, 25, the same. So I can see a very good, sound financial situation that Richmond Valley ratepayers will find themselves in going forward over the coming years. So congratulations to everyone involved in who has prepared these budget. Well done, and I know you do keep a very close eye on it, and council appreciates that. And I also note that, well, I might get the General Manager to comment on our fit for the future financial performance ratios, how they're going, and we're heading in the right directions there.
Oh, I'm happy for Ryan and Dean to comment on that, if you'd like.
Yeah, the main ratio that we are focusing on improving, which is the operating performance ratio, that is, it's still at negative for next year, but over the term of the 4-year delivery program, it actually goes into a positive result, which is really good. And a lot of the money we, for our SRV, we actually got for asset renewals, which puts those major asset ratios into positive as well, which is good.
Thank you. That closes debate. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. We wait for the public consultation time to come back. 14.2 on page 25, which I moved, which I called. I will move. Get a seconder, please.
Second.
Councillor Morrissey. Councillors, as you know, at the February meeting, Council previously adopted the following recommendation: that Council commences the statutory process, which includes community consultation, to consider the reclassification for community land to operational land for the following public land: RSM Park, Danfield Park, Sunnyside Park, Melaleuca Park and Russell Park. This clearly states that Council will include community consultation to consider the reclassification of the land. Unfortunately, since then, there has been many misleading and inaccurate statements being made, which include comments on the public consultation process. I attended 2 public gatherings at Sunnyside Park to answer questions and receive feedback. where I made this issue quite clear. On the second occasion, I was accompanied by Deputy Mayor Morrissey, Councillor Cornish and Lyons. Where Council has been open and transparent, on the contrary, some comments on social media pages were straight out lies. Public consultation is sought in good faith and it is taken very serious as it assists staff in preparing reports so councillors can make a fully informed decision, which is occurring today. Recently, Councillor Morris and I have visited one family member who has connection with the one park, and I have spoken to the other to explain today's recommendations. They both fully understand Council's direction if adopted. I support the report and recommendations, and I note that there will be further opportunity for community input during the preparation of the Urban Growth Management Strategy. Would any other councillors like to speak?
Mr Mayor, I think this is an opportunity just to point out that Council does listen to community feedback. So we went out with the purpose of asking the community what they thought about us reclassifying that land. In this case, there was some conjecture around Sunnyside Park in particular, and we've decided not to proceed with the reclassification of that park. Well, we haven't decided yet, but it's proposed that we don't do that this evening. So I think it just does show that often the community does jump up and down and say, well, where was the community consultation, not fully understanding the process. The first step was community consultation, and we have listened in this instance.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor, I'll just reply to that. I did go out there and I took a copy of that report to the February meeting. I handed them around. I think about 10 or 15 I took out there. I can't recall. But so everyone had a copy of that. I made it quite clear that we would talk with them, we would listen, and all their submissions would be taken into consideration. Unfortunately, some people then took it under themselves to actually mislead a lot of those community members, which I think was very unfortunate for those people, because they believed that the park was already been sold and council had made the decision. As you said, it's a good point. Council is listening. There is still a way to go when we do our other urban strategy. And I would encourage now in the future that those parks get a bit more use, because I have constantly driven past them and I have never seen one person. I would drive past them intentionally 3 times a week over the last 3 months, and I have not ever seen one person in those parks. And as the report says, some of them were just getting used by neighbours to store their gear in caravans, and they are community land. So hopefully going forward, out of the urban strategy, we can come to some progress on these, and everyone the community as a whole can benefit out of those decisions. And as I said, there will be further public input invited. So that closes the debate. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Well, she said she was coming. Okay. No, we'll do it now. Councillors, General Manager just got a message from Councillor Humphries. Unfortunately, she can't make it, so that will go into the apologies also, if that's okay. Well, can I get a motion to do that, please?
Yes, indeed.
Do I have to make a motion to include that? Yeah. I'll need a motion to include that first. Can I get a motion, please, to include it? Councillor Lyons.
Second.
Councillor Hayes. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Now I need someone to move Councillor Humphries' apology. Councillor Morrissey, Councillor Lyons. We good? I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Carried. 14.3 on 29, Councillor Lyons.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've been following this regional waste investment opportunity, and recently there were submissions going through to the EPA and that on waste to energy and getting community feedback and that, and I believe the results of that will come out later this year. But there is growing concern with waste to energy and just what it does to the environment. As much as it's coming across as being clean and green, there's a lot of evidence mounting to do with that. And in this day and age where we're currently consumption driven, we're producing enormous amounts of waste every day. We're also continually depleting natural finite resources, leading the globe to an uncertain future. Some of these resources include cadmium, mercury and tellurium, which will experience permanent shortfalls as a global supply within the next 2 to 3 decades.
Councillor, I
Astonishing.
failed to get a second. I apologise.
sorry.
No, it's my fault, not yours.
I'll second.
Thank
Was the
you.
motion moved?
I took it that Councillor Lyons moved it, she called it, sorry.
Yeah.
So you moved, Councillor Lyons,
I did.
seconded Councillor Hayes. My apologies, councillors. Carry on, Councillor Lyons.
Thank you. So with this, the current recycling rate of these scarce metals is significantly low in all cities across the globe. The concept of a zero waste city includes 100% recycling of municipal solid waste and 100% recovery of all resources from waste materials. However, transferring currently over-consuming cities into zero waste cities is going to be a huge challenge. Among these challenges, waste management is one of the most important for a sustainable city design. High consumption cities in the industrialised world, we have large amounts of paper, over-packaging, food and e-waste, which are all causing a particular socio-economical and environmental problems. Zero waste means designing and managing products and processes systematically to avoid and eliminate the waste and the materials, to conserve and recover all resources from waste streams. So therefore, having a zero waste city, you actually recycle 100% of your waste, recover all the possible resources from waste streams, you produce no harmful waste for our environment. The holistic point of view is designing a zero waste city is relatively hard to achieve. With global climate change and its various effects on human life, the drive towards a sustainable society is very important. There are cities and communities today right across Europe at the forefront of this change. They have local leadership and action driving the transition from a linear to a circular model of resource management. New ambitious European legislation has been enacted that will require local authorities to accelerate progress in the coming years, so prevention and reuse policies are developed. Separate collection is widespread. Quality recycling is the rule, and disposal in landfills and incinerations is phased out. Jane Bremer from Zero Waste Australia Coordinator recently wrote that this project has no social licence to operate in New South Wales or Australia. Waste to energy incinerators undermine the recycling and reuse sectors, entrenching an unsustainable linear economy and increase our deadly air pollution. International experts are working on climate health and the environment warn that we need to urgently move to a more sustainable and regenerative circular economy. The New South Wales EPA should reject this expensive and polluting way to manage the smallest fraction of our waste stream, and instead put New South Wales on the pathway to zero waste model for a circular economy future. With zero waste as a goal, it's both pragmatic and visionary to guide people to emulate sustainable natural cycles, where all discarded materials are resources for others to use. Zero waste means designing and managing products and processes to reduce the volume, the toxicity of waste and materials, to conserve and recover all resources, not just bury them or burn them. Implementing zero waste will eliminate all discharges to land, water and air that may be a threat to planetary, human, animal and plant health. I'd like to sort of envisage that maybe Richmond Valley Council could be a leader in this. And is there some way that we could sort of look into investigating and seeing how we could manage this. It's not going to be an easy fix. It is something that would take years and years, and it would also mean changing our thing. Maybe there would be other industries that would come onto that, where industries like if you've got a, I don't know, say a washing machine that's busted, there's countries in Europe that are now recycling that. So nothing's going to waste. And there is a country over there, and I can't think of it at the moment, but they don't have garbage bins at all. They're doing this. It's proof that it's working. And yeah, why don't we be a leader in its field when instead of looking at burning, go for zero waste? Yeah, thank you.
Any other speakers?
Just as the seconder, I'm staying with the recommendation.
Sorry?
As the seconder, I'm staying with the recommendation as it's written there, but it clearly says there that, you know, we're looking for regional alternative waste treatment options, is right through that report, and that Richmond Valley Council's role in leading the process is there to be, you know, to be had. We've talked to other councils, we've had 9 responses. I don't really know what else we can do. You know, to get to nil waste, I think that's miles and miles down the track, but maybe. And, you know, if we can burn it with nil emissions, well, that'd be wonderful. But until we get to that point, I think we just got to keep pushing along. So this recommendation is, you know, keeps us on that track and pushes us towards something in the future, maybe, on a regional level. So I think it's
Councillor Simpson, did you have your light on for a second?
Yes. I mean, I might just respond quickly to some of the things Councillor Lyons said. Waste management is absolutely a huge issue. It's probably one of the biggest issues that local councils face, and it's particularly important that I think we get together with our neighbours and try and come up with solutions to this problem, which is what this recommendation is all about. Getting to zero waste would be, you know, an absolutely fantastic end goal. It's not going to be achieved in the near future, though, unfortunately. Waste to energy is just one of the options that are being considered, and it's a bit like the future water strategy for me, in that all of the options need to be considered and evaluated, pitted against each other, and then make sure that we move in the best environmental direction. And I just note that in the report, with waste to energy, the EPA recommended that waste to energy could not be used for materials that can be recycled. So that they're not diluting, not contributing to the linear waste stream like you kind of mentioned. So I do actually just have a question in regards to the capital budget. So the capital budget has $3 million in it for the development of Cell 6 at Namoona next year, and I'm wondering whether the EOI process provides an opportunity for us to delay this in lieu of an alternate solution that might come out of it.
Mr. General Manager?
I suppose our approach has been that, for example, with energy from waste, you do still need some landfill. There is a percentage of residue material of what goes into an energy from waste facility. There is still in the vicinity of 5 to 10% of volume that ends up needing to go into a landfill. Having an energy from waste facility is some time away. You know, we're obviously on a journey with that. So I suppose our approach has been, well, we're going to need a landfill, and it might be for a period of time. It gives us another option. It's like having a couple of plan Bs. So that's why we're proceeding with that project. Probably the other comment to make is some of the feedback from the other councils who are in the group, I suppose, has been, you know, I think similar to some of Councillor Lyons' comments about, you know, zero waste. Some councils on the Northern Rivers have those aspirational targets, great aspirational targets, but as you said, the reality is, and I was on a video conference this morning with the EPA. I'm on the local government advisory group for the state, and yeah, there's some good examples of where, for example, crushed glass is being used in asphalt and some other road-related products. But even in that scenario, there's the recycled rate was around 30% from what comes out of your domestic bin, because there's contamination and other issues that they deal with. So getting to zero waste great aspiration. The reality and the economics, we aren't there yet. Potentially we're 20, 30 years away from being there. So what energy from waste provides is a step in that direction through that period of time while we can pursue recycling as well. Because an energy from waste facility is based on a 20-year investment. And our target is that if it was to happen, it is private investment. So the EOI has been broadened to be, as it says in the report, alternative waste treatment options. So we're really going to go to the market and say, what have you got to offer us for our streams of waste? The report that we did identified the volumes for landfill, recyclable, green organics. Go to the market, they know the volumes that are available, what can work. So that's obviously the aim of this recommendation, was to, I suppose, continue on that path that we've been on to see if we can find a high value solution, so that, you know, if this cell 6 really is the last cell to build at the Namuna site. So that cell could serve a purpose for a period of time, but what we need to do, and we have a responsibility, is to set up for the next generation of people in the Richmond Valley, what are they going to do with their waste? Because if we keep landfilling, well, we're going to have to look at a new site and go through the very arduous process of establishing a new landfill facility in the Richmond Valley. So I suppose our aim is to find an alternate to having to do that, and that's what I suppose this process is, the next step down that path.
Any other speakers? Councillor Lyons, back to you.
I was going to actually ask if we could consider including in dot point 2 to further consider regional waste, alternative waste treatment options, as well as zero waste, and then blah, blah, blah. But just include that as an option. So it's putting it out there that we are, as a council, considering that as a possibility down the future. And yeah, I appreciate it's going to be years, but yeah, would that be a possibility to include that, please?
Well, it's just if you wanted to add something in about zero waste, whether you want us to investigate something along those lines, it may be better to have it as a separate part of the resolution. It's just that second one is really about the EOI process. So I think if you put zero waste in there, it confuses that. So whether if you wanted, you could potentially add you could propose an amendment to add a number 4 that is that council staff investigate options around setting zero waste targets and what that means, and bring a report back, something along those lines. If that was something you wanted to move that amendment, and then obviously see whether.
Just have a look on the screen to see if you're happy with that. It's your motion. And Councillor Hayes, you'll be seconding it, so if you want to alter it. Good with that. Councillor Hayes?
It's asking a lot for a report to come back on what we can do to get to zero waste when everyone else is trying anyway. It's not something we're going to come up with.
It'll be something that the staff will have to investigate and look at over time, but I really don't want it seen stopping the process from this 1, 2 and 3, so it's just an add-on there that it can be investigated at a later date and a report come back. You happy with that?
Yeah, happy, yep.
Okay, so we have a mover and a second is okay with that. Any other speakers? Put that motion then, all those in favour. Unanimous. Carried. We now go to 15.1. I believe we have a short presentation, correct?
Yeah, a short presentation on the quarterly budget review for March. So there's a slight error on the first slide. The budget unrestricted cash surplus is increased by $41,308 to $370,177. Use of restricted funds has decreased from 8.545 million deficit to $37,500 surplus, so that's a decrease of 8.582 million, and that's namely due to capital works being carried forward. Net operating result including capital items increased from 8.361 million surplus to 10.061 surplus, an increase of 1.7 million. Net operating result before capital items has improved from a 4.839 million deficit to a 4.218 million deficit, a difference of just over $621,000. I'll take you now through the recommended changes. There's a number of capital works transferred into next financial year. The three main contributing factors for these have been the wet weather that we've been experiencing, difficulty getting contractors, and also the timing of grant funding. So a lot of the grants we've got, we've been successful in the last number of months have been brought into the budget, but a lot of those won't be actually expended until next financial year, so they'll be carried forward. We've got 550,000 for the Casino Memorial Pool upgrade transferred into next year. Under Sports Ground and Parks and Cemeteries, 1.48 million received for the Casino Showground and Racecourse. 918,000 of this was from the Showground stimulus funding, and 500 from the BLURF, the Bushfire Local Economic Recovery Fund. $392,482 in grant funding received for the Drill Hall Walk and Razorback Lookout upgrades. $355,000 for Coronation Park upgrades. They're transferred to next financial year. We've got $123,000 for the Drill Hall Riverside Park. That's been removed and put back into reserve funding at this point in time until we work out when we can actually finish that. $100,000 for the Casino Drill Hall Walk transferred into next financial year. $150,000 for Crawford Square playground upgrades added, and $150,000 for the Razorback Lookout transferred into next financial year. Under community centres and halls, we've got $300,000 of the budget for Ratfield Common project transferred into next financial year. Under building and maintaining roads, we've got $264,700 for the JTR Small Bridge, which is the bridge over 4 Mile Creek at Old Tenterfield Road, transferred to next year, and $165,000 for Ellen Gowan Road Bridge transferred into next year. Under the tourism focus area, we've got $374,500 of grant funding and $533,755 from capital expenditure budgets transferred into next year for the rail trail project. Under town planning and development services, we've added $200,000 to the budget for section 712 contribution due to higher than anticipated revenues received. And under quarries focus area, we've added $307,000 of income due to higher than expected royalties from the Peterson quarry received. Private works, income from private works has increased by 371,000, with corresponding expenditure increasing by 329,000. The difference, that 41,308, is what's affected the cash surplus. That's increased the cash surplus. So that's all come from private works.
Is that specifically the cycleway works down at Broadwater? Is that the main component of that?
The main component.
It's the main, yeah, so that we're doing the cycleway path as a private works for Transport for New South Wales, so that pathway works to complete the Broadwater to Broadwater Beach cycleway.
Under real estate development, 790,000 for industrial land activation transferred to next year. Under waste management focus area, $190,350 increase in revenue received due to higher than anticipated landfill fees. We've got $1 million for cell capping at Namoona landfill transferred to next financial year, and $295,000 for resource recovery infrastructure projects transferred into next year. Under stormwater management focus area, we've got $363,435 of stormwater drainage works for Illawong Lane transferred into next financial year. Under the water supply focus area, we've done a full review of water supply capital works program. New projects totaling 181,000 have been added, and other projects totaling 747,000 transferred into next financial year. We've done the same thing in the sewer services capital works program, and the net value of 753,000 in projects have been either removed or postponed into next financial year. Under environmental management, 140,000 in income and 155 of expenditure for restoration of burnt riparian areas at Wyan and Ratville have been transferred into next financial year, and that's namely due to the affected areas being too wet for our staff to access. And under fleet management, we've got just over $1 million in fleet purchases transferred into next financial year, and that's due to delays in delivery times. So that's why the capital works program for fleet management is at over $3 million for next year. Other changes, our total income from continuing operations has increased of 1.967 million. It now sits at 79.9 million. Total expenses have increased by $214,763. They now sit at 69.8 million. And our loan funding remains unchanged. There's no planned borrowings for this financial year. Capital expenditure has decreased by just under $7 million. It now sits at 27.552 million. Any questions?
Yeah, just
Councillor Simpson.
a couple of quick ones. 150,000 was added for Crawford Square. What's the source of revenue for that?
That's out of the former Section 7.11 developer contributions that have been pooled.
Okay, thank you. I think you did. I think that might have been mentioned actually at a previous thing we were at. Private works, just the terminology private works. When we do private works, and you mentioned there we were doing it for Transport for New South Wales, do we ever actually do private works for like residents, for instance? Or when it's private works, is it just always for RMS or Transport for New South Wales or other government agencies or other councils and the like?
Director Jane.
Through you, Mr Mayor. We do them for private residents as well. So we often do driveways, culvert crossings, that type of thing. So we do them quite regularly. They're generally small jobs though.
Thank you. Similarly, there was some additional projects added for water supplies. Just wondering where they're funded from. Is that just out of the water and sewer reserve?
Correct, yep. And the ones that are transferred, they're transferred to next year have been put back in reserve, and then they'll come out again next year.
Thank you.
Just a quick question before we get a mover and a seconder. On the presentation, page 33, that total income now projected to be almost 80 million, 79. Is that would be one of our biggest incomes ever, do you think?
The biggest in my time,
Yeah, I can't
which is
recall.
11 years. Yeah.
Yep. I can remember when it used to be, 40 million was a big budget. Now
Yeah.
it's just. Dean might have a bit of.
I was just going to say, one of the contributing factors is grant funding, and we're actually getting a report brought to council for the June meeting, which gives over the last 4 to 5 years what's been our experience with grant funding. So looking at any trends, so there'll be a good report, and that's obviously a significant contributing factor to why our income has grown, because we've been we've been more successful. Obviously, we have been also in a period where the governments have been really focused on providing stimulus to local government.
And that total income, that includes 14.3 of that is capital grants and contributions.
Thank you. Can I get a mover for that? Councillor Simpson, I believe you called it.
Yeah, I'll move the recommendation.
Seconder,
Yeah, I'll second.
Councillor Hayes. Councillor Simpson.
As written.
Councillor Hayes. Any other speakers? No right to reply. Put that motion then. All those in favour? Carried. 15, 2, 3 are gone. 16.1, Councillor Simpson, I believe. Yeah, page 43, sorry.
Just have a question in regards to what the actual impact of this is prior to moving any recommendation, if that's okay, Mr. Mayor.
Director Jones?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as in what it's going to change for planning?
Yeah, as in exactly what it means, because to be honest, I read this 6 times and I'm still unclear as to what is going on.
I believe the intent is by adopting this additional clause is to make it very clear what a rural zone is, and we're supportive of secondary dwellings in sort of what would previously term rural residential areas and others. There's, like we're all aware, planning is really complex, and there's other LEPs and SEPs that are also underlying, and often, unfortunately, from a definitional perspective, definitions are different in the different planning documents. So I believe that this is not going to change anything much to how we were interpreting and putting requirements on people who wanted to develop their property. By putting this additional clause in, it just makes it really, really clear when we've got the other myriad of other planning policies, etc., that might define rural properties as something different. So I look at it as basically a bit of housekeeping and making it really clear, but on the ground is not going to change anything greatly to what we've already been doing.
Does that answer the question?
A little bit. Just, so my concern is there's a table here that says before how it looked, and then second how it looked, and there's it says in a rural zone. So previously in a rural zone, it appears to me like there was no requirement for a secondary dwelling to be either 60 square metres or 25% of the total floor area. But after this, that comes into place, that a secondary dwelling on a place in a rural zone could only be 60 square metres or 25% of the total floor area. So if I was in a rural zoned area, I'd be a bit concerned about that coming in.
We're just having a discussion about dwelling opportunities, and that certain, there are some rural land holdings that don't have the ability to put a dwelling on them, and the General Manager is discussing whether that clarified those intentions. Our current planning provisions have always allowed a secondary dwelling, and this, and we also have dual occupancies as well. So there's, again, it's the definitional nightmare, let's just say. By putting these parameters on with the 60 square metres and the gross floor area and having them a certain distance, they're the provisions that we've been applying to existing proposals, and also to clarify them in the LEP clause will make them consistent with the other clauses for the urban zones as well. So we did have restrictions on second dwellings on rural properties with connections and floor space area. This just makes it clear. We're happy to
I'll
defer
ask-
this
I'll-
item if you like.
I'll ask the question. Yeah.
31st of May.
That's what I was asking, Brett, so there is a...
Just,
Needs a
if I can
resolution
ask-
prior to
If I can
the
just ask
31st of
Angela
May.
a question, it might just push it along a bit. In rural property, no one takes up the opportunity to put a secondary dwelling anyway. They go with dual lock because there's no limit on size, and there's no different in charges and fees because it's on rural property. So you've got no sewer, no water. Okay, we've had a discussion once before about it, I think, and I think we defined where a secondary dwelling can go is only where there's sewer and water available. And that determines if it's a rural property or not, but large lot residential probably doesn't come into that category neither. It's really confusing. I was telling Councillor Simpson on the way up, I just wrote confusing across the top of it and wait and see what comes out of it tonight, but I can't see, I can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to put a blanket across everything to say that everything's going to be the same, but it doesn't affect a rural property anyway. A real rural property can do a dual lock with
Councillors,
no restrictions.
we're starting to get into a debate rather than asking questions, so I need a mover or a seconder.
I'm not going to move a motion that I don't understand fully.
Oh,
31st of May.
It's probably a submission to take up the offer to put that clause in our LEP.
Does it have to be me that moves it because I called it?
No, not at all.
I'll move it as written.
Yeah, and
So,
I'll second it. Councillor Hayes?
look, happy to move the motion as written, but I'd like some more information to us, in the near future about it, because I can't see how it's going to affect anything. It's not going to affect anything on rural property. It's going to clean up the other zonings with large lot residential and the village one especially. It's going to classify that they're not rural areas, and then the option in rural areas to go to a dual lock anyway. But the only thing that I'm a bit worried about is the 100 metre separation. If we put that in for rural areas, does that also going to apply to a dual lock, or is it just going to apply to secondary dwellings? Or is it going to put a blanket over them not being able to separate there?
I would think secondary dwellings, because that's what the policy is.
It does say that, but it's not clear. It never has been. Because I'm trying to think, but I think a dual lock has a separation of a maximum of 100 metres for some reason. It's tied up with the secondary dwelling. It's not clear.
Director Jones?
Through you, Mr Mayor, with the dual occupancies in rural areas, there is a tie with the connectivity, because one of the other requirements are that you need to have the same on-site sewage management system, generally. So that's where that old thinking comes from.
Just a quick comment on change that. You've got to have separate on-site sewage for each house, each occupancy. Now.
Well,
So that's only recent. Yep.
I'm behind the times and you're up to date with this. So I think, Councillor Hayes, just to clarify, you've hit the nail on the head. This is purely a housekeeping exercise, and when we get into the definitions of secondary dwellings, dual occupancies, the dual occupancy provision will still be the same on rural areas. This is just tidying up the secondary dwelling. They're two separate land use definitions that essentially they both allow a second dwelling of some nature on a property, but the secondary dwellings are traditionally what we'd term granny flats, so they're small dwellings, not your, a full-blown 4-bedroom house with media rooms, etc. So this is your traditional, your secondary dwellings is what we define as a granny flat traditionally. So it's just clarifying and making the planning provisions consistent, but really on the ground nothing is going to change at the end of the day from the permissibility, particularly in rural zones for secondary or dual occupancies.
Councillors, the way I understood it, that's why I seconded it, is it unifies the rural with the town urban, and I think it's so easy. We talk about red tape and you can't do this on this and you can do, I think this brings it together and you can just say what's your regulations on these, and you just say this is it and it covers the whole council area, and I think it just brings it to simplicity, so I'll support you. Councillor Simpson?
Look, I'm all for supporting simplicity, especially in this area. For me, though, I need to really be able to understand the impacts of what we're approving. If we're being asked to approve something, then I need to be able to understand what those impacts are. Look, I'll stick up my hand. I probably should have asked the question prior to the meeting so that I could have got some clarification on that. And it's easy to say it's housekeeping, but I haven't been convinced by the arguments that have been put forward that anyone is really 100% understanding what this is. So I'm going to abstain from voting.
Well, that'll be a negative. Yep, that's fine. I was hoping that I understand it, so I haven't come across clear with what I think. Any other councillors?
Yeah, I just closed and I moved it. I really think we need some more work done around the dual occupancy situation for a rural property, because things have changed. Nobody does a secondary dwelling on a rural property because you basically can only get an extra bedroom. They want a 3-bedroom house over there so the family can stay on the property, and they don't want them 100 metres away. They want them as far away from the house as they can get them. So I think we need to do some more work around that when the time's right.
Yep.
And that'll move the rural area away from the secondary dwelling completely. So it's just something else. That's another bit that needs sorting out later. But happy to go with that.
Thank you. Close the debate. All those in favour? Carried. Against? Councillor Simpson. Uh, 16.2, Councillor Simpson, I believe.
I'll just move that recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Seconder?
Second.
Sorry, who was Councillor Morrissey? Had me head down. Councillor Simpson?
No, nothing to add. I did that in error. I called the wrong number.
That's fine. So I'll put that and anyone else? Put that recommendation. All those in favour? Thank you. Councillors, now move on to item 17, matters for information. Has any councillors got any questions or?
I'll move it.
Sorry, moved.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Morrissey.
The grant
Councillor Hayes first.
Grant applications is there on page 58. Just a question around grant applications in our budget and everything, when we've got all this money floating around. And are we in a position for the next, like we're coming up for another term of council, the next term of council as it comes through, to be able to add to that, the major projects? And is it worthwhile applying for grants if we can't, we haven't got the staff to manage the budget and to perform the...
That's a very hard question to answer, because we know the constraints with some of the budget items we have and getting tenders and that, but there's still community expectations that if there's money out there, they want council to pursue it. So it's a good question, but it's a hard one to answer because you've got to know when to stop, and also some of these do also add onto our depreciation, which hurts council's underlying result.
Even renewing assets, we've got to be able to do it. You know, and have the internal setup to be able to at least manage it, if not carry out the work. I'm just wondering if at this point in time is a good time to start thinking about increasing the management system and the project management team, and maybe start employing people that can actually do the work rather than waiting for contractors. I don't know. Is it time?
Mind you, some of these jobs, like building a swimming pool, we haven't got the resources to do that. You know, it's just, you know, some of those things, they're specialist work, so it's very hard. Like the sale yards, there's no way we could gear up to build a sale yard. So the showground, you know, so very hard.
There seems to be an opportunity there, though, to take on capital works, you know, of some description. You know, they talk about water supply and stuff like that. The council's already doing it. And what do you call it on their works orders? Private works, sorry. Yeah. So to build a business around that, maybe something that can produce income. You know.
Mr. General Manager?
One of the things we are supplementing our project management sort of resourcing with is using Public Works Advisory, which we have to for the the work that we're doing around the Rapville Sewer project, the industrial activation project, the power supply project, and also the Rapville Hall project. So we are using some of the project managers within Public Works as well. They're obviously funded directly from those projects. So we are looking at different models, and we're trying to work out the best way to get the projects managed and delivered. Conversation this morning with the executive about potentially the need for some more resourcing in our project management office, because we've got a big program ahead of us. The challenge we have is that to attract staff, they obviously want certainty for a period of years. Whereas I suppose our program, we're going to have a big program for a couple of years, so we're almost got to take a punt on, we can get some extra resources for a couple of years, but the challenge under the award is that if it drops off the cliff, or we fall off a cliff as far as funding goes, we're going to have additional staff. So you sort of got to take a punt. There's obviously natural attrition. We can review the organisation where we need to. So we're very conscious that we have an ambitious program, and at the moment we are a bit stretched, but also the private sector is a bit stretched as well to deliver all these things.
The line of thought was that through private works, you could probably fund those extra wages and ongoing funding to have them ready there for these major projects, and their wages are covered for a period of time.
Any other? Councillor?
Through you, Mr Mayor. With the grants received, on page 63, digitising planning grant, project ID 10423, and then grant applications submitted was the same project number, 10423, and the digitising planning program. Is it an ongoing project?
One off. Do you want to answer that?
Page 63
Yep.
and page 66. Digitising planning grant.
It's actually been applied for and received in the same month. That's why it's there.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councillor Simpson.
Just a comment on Norton's Gap Road and the update that's been provided here. And I mean, you told us it was bad, but those photos really do show when the white lines down the middle don't even come close to matching up, how bad that road really is, and how that's going to take some time. And I think I was reading in there that they want like a 3-month program of surveying it and watching what happens with the slip before they can move forward. So very unfortunate and annoying, I know, for our community, but it's important that we make that safe and do it properly. So just a comment on that. My next one is a few questions on 17.7 and the Northern Livers Livestock Exchange statistics. I note that we budgeted for throughput of 125,000 head, which we're not going to get to. And I do remember sitting here and saying that I believed that that was overly ambitious, but the manager wanted to put that in there, and I said, and I will hold you accountable when we don't get there. So now I'm holding you accountable because we're not there, and I'm wondering what our budgeted throughput figure is for the next financial year. And I have a few other questions.
Mr. General Manager?
We'll give you the budgeted, point taken. I think we need to revisit those figures and potentially, Mayor and I had a discussion earlier today, whether it's a 5-year rolling average. Obviously the agricultural industry, as we know, fluctuates. And yeah, I think it's on one hand good for our manager to have some aspirational targets, but maybe we need to revisit, having targets is good, but when we set our budget, it's good to be realistic, if not times a bit conservative. So I think we need to take that on board. Obviously, we have identified the need to update and review the business plan that was done the first half of last calendar year. So I think that's on our manager's agenda, and the figure is? 130. So we've got 130 in our budget for the next financial year. Okay, so I think we need to reconsider that.
Yeah. I had to say, as the General Manager said, I raised the issue with him this morning, and my suggestion is that we look through and go over the 5-year rolling average it out, and say that's our projected figures, because you get 131, the highest figures I think ever, to set next year's budget on that. I don't think that's sound. Anyway, that's something that the General Manager will raise, no doubt, and we'll let Council know what that will be next year. And the second part is how it affects our budget. We got an answer?
Yeah, that won't affect the cash part of the budget. It goes back into reserve or comes out of reserve, so.
Okay, so it'll just affect the reserve.
Correct.
Okay.
So then just a couple of questions around where we're at the moment. Over there, the current budget, as I understand it, for the operating cash result was to have a surplus of 313,000. We're currently 200,000 shy of that, obviously with only 1 quarter left to go. Where do we see that ending up? And also, similarly, I guess with our capital program, we had a $37,000 budgeted surplus, and we're currently sitting at $147,000 deficit. And where do we see that ending up? And my concerns are that, particularly on the capital income side, which when I look at these numbers, that's where the income's missing from. It's from the capital income. That's because we budgeted around $125,000 head, and we're not going to get there. And so across those two things, we're currently $300,000 worse off than where we're budgeted. Obviously, there's still a quarter to go, so hopefully we'll improve somewhat from there. But that's a long way from where we have said we would be.
One of the contributing factors that I am aware of is with the, I'm not sure directly how that affects the outcomes, but the biosolids project, where we've been dealing with the legacy of those manure piles due to all of the wet weather. That's been delayed significantly, so it's actually the opportunity to bring in income. I would have to check with our manager there as to whether that's is that on target for end of financial year to bring in some more revenue? I'd need to check that, but I know that project has been delayed.
On these numbers, the biosolids project budgeted figures are currently nearly $210,000 of a $220,000 budget. It's not what is making the numbers not appear where they're meant to be. Perhaps we could, at the next information night, bring an item on this and go through that, because I think it's prudent that we manage it solidly from a financial point of view.
Agree.
Yep, happy to bring a item to our June information session.
What would the conversation be like at the moment if we based it on percentage rather than the throughput? Completely different conversation. And if you looked at it over 5 years, it's probably not going to be a different conversation. So, no, it's not.
You mean the yard fee is a percentage of the sale price, like basically same as what the agents is based on, commission on price. I mean, with the increase in the fees that we put in place, we are getting that highest tier income, so we are benefiting from that, but everyone else is benefiting as well. And I think, you know, what are we at? 110 million yet? We must be getting close. So, as in revenue through the facility for the financial year. So, yeah, there's certainly a strong argument for it, and we know we've had plenty of arguments about that. Might be time for another one in 2 years' time when it's review time.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to point out, I know there's some great stuff happening out there, and I don't want to, you know, make this a particularly negative conversation. I know there's some great stuff happening out there. We just need to make sure that, from a financial point of view, that we're on top of it.
And the going forward, that loan will be paid off, which will be a huge help to that bottom line budget. But currently now, it was 7, I think, wasn't it? Yeah, so only 5 left, I think.
One of the other impacts for operationally and on the expenditure side has obviously been COVID. So for us to keep that facility operating through the COVID period, we've had to have additional staff, we've had to put in new systems. And the other fact is that when you build something new, your expectations go up on your levels of service. So I know there's been pressure on staff levels, but I think it'd be good to get Brad to come along, June info session. You can ask questions, he can give you some insights into where the business is at, and he may have some other ideas about what he may see as opportunities.
Thank you. Any other questions? I've just got a couple of probably questions, points. One's page 52, the dollar development applications. It's the first time it's reached that level, and we still have a quarter to go. No, not a quarter. A couple of months to go. And the other one is the page 53. It looks like we will pass the best ever that I can recall of total development applications lodged, and I would not surprise me if it actually went over 300 for the first time, which is a good outcome. And on page 82, back onto the road at Norton's Gap, I noticed that the last little sentence there, council officers will continue to communicate progress to the stakeholders and the community as the process progresses. Mr. General Manager, I'd like to see a monthly update in our newsletter, just where a little blurb about where we're up to with that road. It's a very important link to Lismore or Kyogle out there, so I think every month if we can let the community know, because no doubt there will be some community engagement out of this report. And I think we need to do that monthly because there is major concerns out there of why is it not opened. They don't see those photos. What are we doing? And it's a bit ironic that on Facebook the other day, in 1991, there was a major landslip out there, not as bad as this, and the road was half gone. So it's a reoccurring problem, and how we fix it with those natural landslips and sinkages and slumps, it's a very hard ask, but no doubt the engineering advice we'll get in the future may be able to help us with that.
Yeah, we're certainly doing the update. We've been doing updates. We're using Facebook, so certainly advise people to keep an eye on those. One of the ideas of doing this, well, obviously I've been getting quite a number of questions, as we all have, about this, so that was why we thought it was timely to bring in a report to council. Based on this, we should probably do a sort of concise media release that our local newspapers can pick up, just so that I think we need to explain and make people aware that, yeah, okay, while we're monitoring this for 3 months, we've then got to decide on a fix. We've got to secure funding. There's a lot that's going to go into this, and so the likelihood is that I don't see this road being open by Christmas, and I think it's time we made people aware that this is a medium-term issue. It's going to take a bit to fix it, so that's But I think take the point. We'll do regular communications across our different methods of media releases, Facebook, community newsletters, our community email newsletter, so we'll keep people up to date.
Also, I'm pleased, and hopefully it will be confirmed that this can come through the natural disaster works. I know on page 82, because it's going to be a really big spend to repair this slip. So
I think it was timely to thank both governments for the support they've provided us around disaster recovery, given what this one's going to end up like.
All right, Councillor Morrissey, right, a reply? Put that. Any other councillors? I'll put that motion then. All those in favour? Carried. Sorry.
I just wanted to backpedal a bit. You mentioned about the development applications and the amount of money that's going through. We're still not getting any compliant development through Richmond Valley Council. Compliant development applications. I've mentioned it before, and the revenue policy has an item in there for a desktop assessment of a compliant development prior to lodgement. So, well, I suppose I actually asked for one the other day, and they said that they don't do them, but it's in the revenue policy. That's where you can get your compliant development application assessed prior to lodgement, right? So the information I said, you need to go to a private certifier. So off you go to a private certifier, and guess what happens? They take it on, do the job, and take it off council. It's just, I think that's why we're not getting any. Yeah, I was told by the concierge that they don't do them.
Can I suggest we review that and potentially bring a briefing to our next info session?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Anyone else? I'll put that motion in. All those in favour? Carried. Page 88, questions on notice, nil. Questions for writing in the next meeting? Anyone? Any councillor? No? Matters referred to closed council. I need a recommendation to move up.
Second.
Mr. General Manager, has there been any written representation made regarding this meeting going into closed council?
No, there hasn't.
Are there any verbal representations from the members of the public? Not tonight, they're all gone. I'll put that motion then. All those in favour? Carried. I'll take that as a vote, Councillor Hayes. Yep, thank you.
Councillor Morrissey's going.
Let's wait for Councillor Morrissey to come back in. He did vote while he was in the room. All those in favour? We back on?
Hey, Director Zeller, your reports, you can read them out.
Mr General Manager, would you lead the resolutions of council, please?
I'll let Director Zeller do that. They're both reports from his team, so I'll let him do the honours.
Director Zeller.
In matter 20.1, VP 233805, Casino Drill Hall Memorial Walk, Coronation Park and Viewing Platform. Recommendation that Council decline the tender submission for the construction of the Casino Drill Hall Memorial Walk, Coronation Park and Viewing Platform, as the price is in excess of Council's allocated budget. 2, authorise the General Manager to enter into negotiations with suitably qualified contractors with intent to reach a deliverable solution. Following successful negotiations, enter into a contractual agreement to deliver the works. And 3, a report be brought back to Council on the outcome of the negotiations. 20.2, construction of Casino Memorial Pool Upgrade, Stage 1. Recommend that Council accept the tender from Momentum Build Proprietary Limited, which represents the best value for Council at $5,295,185, exclusive of GST. 2, Council approve an additional $1.5 million in borrowing in the 2021-22 budget to enable the completion of Stage 1 of the redevelopment. And 3, the General Manager be authorised to negotiate and finalise the terms and conditions of any contract or agreement, including extension of the scope of works in line with the content of this report and the available budget, and affixing the seal of Council where necessary.
Thank you. That concludes the meeting. Everyone have a safe trip home and thank you for your attendance. Close the meeting. Thank you.